knows too much.
You might think Washington, D.C. think tanks are conservative by nature, but the first one created is decidedly leftist. The Institute for Policy Studies, IPS, founded by former concert pianist Marcus Raskin and Boston lawyer Richard Barnett in 1963. Strangely, Raskin was an aide to McGeorge Bundy, while Barnett worked for John J. McCloy in the State Department. You'd be hard-pressed to find two more well-connected members of the oligarchy than Bundy and McCloy. Bundy was the bonesman offspring of two powerful Boston Brahmin clans who rose to head the CIA-connected Ford Foundation. He was an intelligence officer during World War II and afterwards co-wrote bonesman Henry Stimson's autobiography. In 1949, he was appointed Secretary of the powerful Council on Foreign Relations and began having private meetings with General Dwight Eisenhower, who would soon be president, and Allen Dulles, who Eisenhower would put in charge of intelligence operations. These meetings no doubt involved David Rockefeller, who would soon chair a committee to completely reorganize the government. In 1954, Rockefeller was made Special Assistant on Psychological War, and the following year he created the Planning Coordination Group for running covert counterintelligence responses to national security issues. McCloy served as head of the World Bank and became a member of the highly sensitive Warren Commission. Before World War II, McCloy was North American attorney for I.G. Farben, largest corporation in Europe, and after the war he was Bonesman Stimson's aide when Stimson devised the Black Eagle Fund and disappeared billions in Nazi and Japanese stolen gold, which was divvied up into hundreds of secret funds and banks around the world, while dividends and interest used to topple democracies unfavorable to Wall Street interests, while fomenting right and left-wing terror squads to drive the dialectical confrontations. The U.S. military headquarters was set up inside Farben's massive complex, which strangely was never bombed during the war, even though it represented the nerve center of Germany's industrial and chemical operations, perhaps due to the close relations between Farben and Rockefeller's Standard Oil, companies that did business throughout the war. Farben quickly became Hitler's biggest corporate booster and financial sponsor, while its in-house intelligence network became the brains behind the SS and Gestapo. In fact, Farben had been the brainchild of John Foster Dulles, Eisenhower's Secretary of State, and Dulles helped design the immense complex housing over 200,000 workers. I find it disturbing the U.S. High Command occupied the same offices where Zyklon B was designed and immediately began transferring 700 Nazi scientists, as well as many sadistic war criminals, into North and South America with new identities, a highly secret project called Paperclip that was greatly assisted by the Vatican, whose bank was cut into the action on the Black Eagle Fund through Opus Dei operatives in the Philippines, which is why you find so many Malta Knights at the top of the CIA today, and why Opus Dei commands so much power inside the Vatican Bank. McCloy was put in charge of Germany and swiftly pardoned any Nazis they wanted recruited. Now, what are the odds aides of these immensely powerful insiders whose families were longtime Republicans would create a center of energy on radical activity in America? Whenever I find operations like this, I suspect spooks at work. Funding for IPS came from two sources: Philip Stern, heir to the Sears fortune in Chicago, and banker James Warburg, whose father designed the Federal Reserve, a privately held banking cartel that rules our money supply and sets interest rates. Warburg's uncle, Jacob Schiff, financed the Japanese attack on Russia and was partner with bonesman E.H. Harriman. Schiff's father was the primary broker for the Rothschilds, and the family played a leading role in funding Zionism. These deep connections indicate IPS was no accidental grassroots emanation, but a conscious construction of a system it was designed to attack, which is standard spook operational procedure, because if there's going to be something attacking you, it's best if you secretly manipulate it so there's no unintended harm to your bottom line. I suspect IPS appeared shortly after the Students for a Democratic Society released the Port Huron statement, because SDS was gathering momentum quickly and threatening a socialist youth revolt. However, by 1969, SDS was shattered by internal divisions fomented by undercover agents, while its center of energy was stolen by a small group of fanatics who supported terror tactics and murder. They called themselves the Weathermen after a Bob Dylan song, and they were funded by IPS. The Weathermen destroyed the student youth movement by driving it off a cliff. I was right there, says Patty Astor. SDS was really gathering steam and poised to become a real force, and the Weather Underground blew the whole thing to shit. It was a serious, almost like a body snatching scenario where one day everything was fine, and the next, people you knew were screaming about getting in cells and tons of crazy shit. The true leaders of the Weather Underground were Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers. Ayers' father was immensely wealthy. He was CEO of Commonwealth Edison and sat on many boards, including Sears's, where he likely would have been seated next to IPS sugar daddy Philip Stern. Dorn also had a privileged upbringing in Minneapolis and ended up at the Rockefeller-funded University of Chicago Law School, where she became the first student organizer for the communist-infested National Lawyers Guild. In fact, IPS was run by Yale Law School grad Peter Weiss, an Austrian-born lawyer and prominent leader inside the National Lawyers Guild, although his wife Cora also seems to have played a prominent role. Although they deny it today, Dorn and Ayers were the most bloodthirsty instigators and always ready to up the stakes. Dorn's most famous quote came at the Wargasm they organized in Flint, Michigan. In reference to the recent murder of Sharon Tate, she announced, "First they killed those pigs, then they ate dinner in the same room with them, then they even shoved a fork into Pig Tate's stomach. Wild." In homage to Hitler, she created a three-fingered fork salute. They painted Manson as culture hero and role model. When Timothy Leary was busted in California and jailed for 10 years for possessing 2 joints, President Richard Nixon already considered him the most dangerous man in America. Leary was a brilliant psychologist and designed a personality profile quiz he was forced to take when he checked into prison. The problem with Leary, however, is that he was already blanketed by spooks when he arrived in California. The Weathermen seized on his incarceration as an opportunity to bust Leary out and whisk him to Africa, and they employed the escape as a publicity stunt to enhance their visibility. Dorn wore a button on her blouse. Cunnilingus is cool, fellatio is fun, while showing off massive cleavage. Steve Tapas requested she button up, and she responded by pulling out a breast. "You like this tit?" she said. "Take it." Eventually, participation in group orgies became compulsory inside the Weather Underground, resulting in widespread genital infections known as weather crud. In this regard, they resembled the Process Church of Final Judgment, who also deployed drugs and sex games to reprogram the flock. On February 12, 1970, 2 bombs went off in the Berkeley police station parking lot during a shift change, allegedly to maximize the death count, yet thankfully no officers were killed. But 4 days later, another bomb went off during a shift change at a station in San Francisco, and this one did succeed in murdering an innocent officer. Isn't it strange that when Leary was captured and brought back to prison with his sentence greatly enhanced, he caved and told everything he knew about the Weathermen, had broken him out of jail and whisked him to Africa with a fake passport? Funny though, nothing came of his confession, not a single arrest nor interrogation. Bizarre, considering the Weathermen are supposed to be the FBI's #1 target. It gets even stranger because Ayers and Dorn eventually became tenured professors in Chicago, holding down high-paying gigs at major universities. It's unfathomable how 2 terrorists on the most wanted list could live a life on the lam for over a decade and then emerge in 1980 and serve no jail time. In fact, Dorn almost immediately got a gig with the most prestigious law firm in Chicago, the same one that hired Obama and Michelle. Most charges against the Weathermen had already been dropped. This is the opposite of what happens when cop killers come to court. The most prominent spokesman for IPS is Noam Chomsky, who is a 9/11 conspiracy denier who faithfully supports the official cover story. In fact, Chomsky claims the reason he knows 9/11 wasn't an inside job is because if it had been, the hijackers would have been sheep-dipped as Iraqi and not Saudi. This position makes zero sense and ignores the close personal relationship between Bonesman Bush family and the ruling Saudi royal houses. The other primary supporter of the official story in the media is John Foster Chip Burleigh, who used to oversee a propaganda network funded through the Ford Foundation. Burleigh was also a prominent figure inside the National Lawyers Guild, as well as the CIA-sponsored National Student Association. And Burleigh was apparently an undercover FBI informant in Chicago for a time, and he seems to have some sort of relationship with the Mossad, because he frequently appears in the media as an expert on their operations. Burleigh's stockbroker father, Colonel George Numa Burleigh Jr., named his son after John Foster Dulles, former Secretary of State and head of the most powerful law firm in America, Sullivan and Cromwell. It was John Foster Dulles who created I.G. Farben by convincing 6 German corporations to merge, and as bait, Dulles arranged huge loans from Wall Street to seal the deal. Farben was designed largely to mimic operations of Standard Oil, which became a major investor in Farben, joining Max Warburg and the DuPonts. Today, Burleigh has become a leader in helping foment a new inquisition, which brands political heretics as lunatics deserving incarceration and forced medication, simply for not accepting the official stories on 9/11 and the JFK assassination. He dubbed this imaginary mental disorder as conspiracism. The IPS works hand in glove with the oldest magazine in America, The Nation, run by Katrina vanden Heuvel, who sits on the IPS board and is also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Her father, William vanden Heuvel, was a protege of William Donovan, who headed the Office of Strategic Services, precursor of the CIA. Even more telling, vanden Heuvel was the personal attorney for Bonesman W.A. Harriman. Maybe you can see the incredible tight-knit relationship between all these characters and why I suspect staged confrontations and propaganda psyops are in play. This is the real world, a spook-infested wilderness of mirrors where up is down and black is white.